to he becomes a late duck. You can look in Google and every place else. Those 15 presidents were the second cadence. You'll see that during the second term, about 40 or 50, about 50% rate of doing things and acting in comparison to the first one. Because in America, in contrast to our horrible system, their political term of the legislators is completely different, is completely separate from the political life of a president. Then they do not depend on him, because then they don't have to necessarily run with him a second time. They are obligated, they're not obligated to him, and with time they start moving towards the voter, and with time they are less close to the president. As far as the demographic situation goes, ostensibly we are supposed to be turning into a minority with time, so there is no choice. We have to give up the geography for the demography. But in Shimon said this to Herzl, and the demographer of the time, Shimon Dubnov, he actually had a forecast at the time, and he said that according to the demographic analysis, in the year 2000, no more than 500,000 Jews will live in the state of Israel. I think he was wrong by 5.5 million. So before 1948, the founder of the Israel Census Bureau, which again they talked about the taxes. Mr. Masson, he was a statistician, Professor Roberto Bacchi of the time. He told Ben-Gurion time and time again back then, it's no time to establish a state. 600,000 Jews is not a critical mass. And then he gave him the forecast, and he wrote 6 documents in the archives in Sde Boker, and he expected best case scenario. He didn't believe in it, by the way, but he believed that the best case scenario would be 2.3 million Jews by 2001. 33% minority. He was only off by 3.5 million Jews. The situation today, and I skip now because I think time is actually working against me right now. Let me get to our situation now. Roberto Bacchi's students basically hold the same perception, same view, again isolating the Arab fertility rate, diminishing the value of the Jewish productivity rate, ignoring the immigration potential, and not understanding and ignoring the negative immigration rate, Arab immigration rate, again from Judea and Samaria from 1950 till this very day. Every year, again, except for 6 years, every single year there was a negative immigration balance on the Arab side. In 2010, by the way, almost 17,000 Arabs left Judea and Samaria. Before that, again, 17,000 Arabs left. A year before that, 16,000 left. A year before that, 15,000. So again, notice the numbers keep increasing despite the talks about economical flourishing and democracy. It seems that they probably know something that we still do not understand. The bottom line is regarding the Arabs of Judea and Samaria. The real number, which is recorded according to the Ministries of Health and Education and the Palestinian voting committees, and according to the Israeli Border Patrol that knows exactly who's passing in and out, and according to a survey that was lately conducted by the World Bank that discovered 32% discrepancy, meaning a superficial increase of the Arabs of Judea and Samaria and Gaza. The real figure, which is recorded, is 1.6 million Arabs and not 2.55 million, meaning you see a great discrepancy that is recorded of about 1 million. How do we come to that? You have to examine what the students of Professor Baki never did, and I emphasize this out of knowledge. They never examined, but they just accepted those figures, and they keep, reverberating these to the public in Israel. But again, to get to a discrepancy, a gap of 1 million, a difference of 1 million, again, what do? You add more than 400,000 to the toll, more than 400,000 residents, Arab residents from Judea and Samaria, that today basically for more than a year they have been abroad. So there's an international war, again a professor, a tourist, and immigrant, whatever, somebody who's left Israel and he hasn't been there for a year, he's out of the count. 50,000 residents of Arabs from Jerusalem, another 100,000 Arabs from Judea and Samaria that have married Israeli women. They are counted twice, once by ourselves as Israeli Arabs because they are now residents in Israel. And we also count residents, not only citizens. But again, as Arabs of the West Bank or by the Palestinian, that is a double count. And that brings another 350,000 beyond those 400,000 that have emigrated. And that is how you get to, and again, all this immigration that is not counted by themselves. And again, you see these gaps. You see that discrepancy between the ministries and that Palestinian mess. On the one hand, it shows us that about 20 to 60,000 births a year that are not recorded because they do not take place, not here, maybe abroad. And now let me talk about, in the green line. Within the green line, the peak discrepancy between the productivity Arab rate and the Jewish productivity rate, again in the peak time in 69 was 6 births. In 2010, 0.5 birth. When the Jewish productivity is on the increase and the Arab one is on the decrease, and among the Jews, especially there's an increase among the secular Jews. The ultra-Orthodox during the last 15, 20 years, they're actually on the decrease of about a child and a half for one ultra-Orthodox woman. But the immigrants from the previous Soviet Union, again, they had a rate of 1.1 children per family, but now they've already passed the 2 mark and are approaching the 3-child mark, especially in the Tel Aviv area. I think managers of hospital knows this. And again, the maternity wards are often so full. Women are often giving birth in the corridors. We're talking about Ramat HaSharon, Bavli, Ramat Aviv, Gimel, Nord, Afeka, Tel Baruch, all those northern neighborhoods of Tel Aviv, 3-4 kids per family. And nobody seems surprised. So the result, as term as figures goes, that if in 1995 we had 80,000 Jewish births, in 2010, 125,000 Jewish births per annum. That is an increase of 56%. During that same period, among Israeli Arabs and Judea and Samaria and Gaza, there was a stability, and that the number remained fixed. And why was that? For the very simple and very logical reason and very clear reason: modernization. We are talking about Judea and Samaria. 70% are rural residents. In 1967, again, every child worked, and a few were supposed to die on the way. So there was this incentive to bring more children into the world because many babies died, so they had to have extra kids. Today, 78% are urbanized, with 30% of unemployment, living in remote places from the family, with a terrible civil war between PLO and Hamas, and of course the war against Israel. In addition to this, we are talking about an expansion of the education system, expanding education among Arab women. Every woman in Judea and Samaria is in high school. And that actually means less and less get married at the age of 15. They only start giving birth later on. They start maybe at 18 or 20 and actually ends sooner because of that awareness of career planning, family planning. That is something that has really greatly penetrated the Arab community by UNRWA. By the way, that whole area is flooded with all kinds of pills and things like contraceptives, and this has brought about a decrease as well. By the way, it's not only unique to our area. In Iran, 7-8 kids 30 years ago. Today, 1.7 kids per family. They are complete Europeans. Again, for reasons of internal security, again, so how much can you expand with the demography if the economy is so bad? But again, there's also calculations of modernizations. Egypt, 2.5 births per woman. Jordan, again, a sister of Judea and Samaria, 2.8 births per woman. That is the direction of the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria. Again, they are at about 3.2 births, and we again talking about North Africa, 1.9 births per woman. The Gulf countries, 2.5 births per woman, except from Saudi Arabia. The bottom line is that the rate of productivity, which is more than 2.9 in fertility, is 2.9. And it will probably pass the 3 because a Jewish woman, every Jewish woman, actually brings to the world 3.3 children per woman. Israel today has a high fertility rate, except for Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Syria. I said, according to Alamas, the Palestinian Alamas, they are up to 3.2 births per Palestinian woman. That is very close to the Jewish fertility rate. We don't know what the green line is. We do not differentiate. In any case, the result is that in that combined area of Judea, Samaria, and the west part of the green line, we are talking about 66% Jewish majority that enjoys, again, the support, the very strong support, because of the decrease in Arab fertility rate and the increase in the Jewish fertility rate, and a negative immigration rate among the Arabs. And we have not even talked about that per capita, the number of people who emigrate from Israel is at a low point since the 80s. The number of Jews coming back to Israel is at a peak since the 80s. Again, Aliyah is a gradual, it's a slow increase, but it's still increasing. And I think the critical point is that if we have a government here that, unfortunately, we don't have such a government now, that will not understand, like all the other prime ministers, from Ben-Gurion until Shamir, that Aliyah is the central axis of the Jewish state, then in light of those economic discrepancies and gaps, our stable economy, again, that collapse was only to be expected in the United States and in Britain and in France. Today we are talking about anti-Semitism that is on the increase. We are talking about great Zionist youth in all those countries. That is great potential for Aliyah of about 50,000 per annum. A government that will know how to leverage this will be able to get to, in 2035, 80% of a Jewish majority in that combined area of Judea, Samaria, and the